Good morning, goeiemorgen, the last day of Nation in Conversation. Let me start by acknowledging our teachers and our lecturers who spend your lives with our young people. You are special human beings, and you're most welcome. And of course, all our younger faces around, this is always exciting for us, this last day, to welcome you. Remember that agriculture and the whole food value chain offers all the different parts of business. It's not only production, IT, legal, CA, financials, the whole lot. There's lots of space in this exciting agricultural value chain space. Thank you very much, Dr. Meyer. Thank you for being here. This is what involvement looks like. So, dit voel vir my altyd of as ek hier onderkom of ek in 'n ander provinsie is. Omdat die politici hier part en deel is van oplossings en nie praters is in die res van die land nie. Thank you for what you do in your team. Andy, a very competent anchor, you'll hear her today. She knows agriculture and she's passionate about it, and the team that you have here, wonderful to have you here, and I look forward to the session. Resilience and hope is what we need in our country. It is the fuel that fires achievers. It is not something that you get from somewhere else. It's internal. You have to work at it as anything else. This is the greatest country on the planet. It has the most resilient people. Onthou dat julle geneties is julle toegerus om in Suid-Afrika te wees. There's no other nation that has the volatility that we have. And what you are half genetics and half environment. That's it. So you have what it takes. Don't become despondent. We have a wonderful country and a wonderful sector we are in. Enjoy the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francois. A couple of thank yous before we start. Thank you all for coming. It's such a great opportunity to engage on important issues. The youth are often left till last, but today we're going to say we've saved the best for last. We're talking about the future of agriculture, so thank you for coming. Thank you to Senves for the opportunity with the Nation and Conversation platform to have these important engagements. Thank you to Grain SA for Nampo Cape. We hope it's going to become an annual event on the agriculture calendar, that it's something that we can look forward to every year without fail, to address specifically the issues in agriculture in this beautiful and important province. I think the first day we were here in Bredasdorp, coming from Johannesburg, I said, well, I might need to consider changing my vocation so that I can spend more time in the Western Cape. And lastly, thank you to our panelists. Thank you for representing, and no pressure, various aspects of the agricultural sector through your participation as young people in agriculture. Just a foreword to our younger members of the audience. We might not look young to you, but there's a caveat somewhere in fine print in some document that says 35 and under or 40 and under, depending on what you're talking about. We're still young, so I think we're all right. I, however, am the oldest person on the panel today, so I think some people will have to call me Tani, but I'm going to excuse them from that if I'm allowed. And let me introduce you to our panelists today. To my left, we have Dr. Jan Greiling. He's the lead Stellenbosch Agroinformatics Initiative at the University of Stellenbosch, a very learned man, doctor, that gives it away. And I always say, how do you know the difference between an academic doctor and a medical doctor? Well, if you're on an airplane and there's an emergency and the air hostess says, well, do we have a doctor on the plane? Everyone puts their hands up, but only the medical doctors rush forward to give help. So thank you very much for being here. To Jan's left, we have Carla Hendricks. She's one of my colleagues. She's a project manager at Brand Republic, but she comes from a livestock and animal feeds background. So she's someone who has navigated a very interesting route throughout different parts of the agricultural sector. To her left is Aviwe Qatiwe. He's a successful young farmer from the Eastern Cape. His farm is called Soutflay, and he operates in Somerset West, producing largely livestock and lucerne.
East.
Somerset East. Sorry, I do apologize. Thank you for being here, Aviwe. Aviwe was also featured on season 2 of African Farming, so you might be familiar with his story from there. Gershwin Low is 'n aandeelhouer by Dasberg Boerdery hier in Rivier sonder End. Hy is die bestuurder van die lewende hawe afdeling op die plaas. Gershwin, vreeslik dankie dat jy hier is vandag ook. Gershwin was nou onlangs op seisoen 3 van African Farming gewees. So ons is baie bevoorreg om jou hier by ons te hê as nog 'n produsent wat weet van die uitdagings as 'n jong boer.
Baie dankie.
And Elaine Viljoen she's a junior economist from Grain SA, so we've got some official representation on the panel today as well. Thank you very much, Elaine.
Thanks for being here.
If you'll allow me, just so that our audience can gain some familiarity with the different journeys that you've walked in agriculture, I'm going to start with you, Jan. If you can give us just a brief background, what your family history is in farming, if you have any, your journey as a young person and student, and some of the reasons why you got involved in agriculture.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So in short, when I was small and young, I wanted to be a farmer, and I still want to be a farmer. But so when I grow up, hopefully I'll get to farm. So my family have been farming for generations in Mpumalanga, Wakkerstroom. Unfortunately, my dad died when I was 10 years old, so we ceased our farming operations. But the agricultural side of things stayed. So I ended up going to Boland Landbou Agricultural School in Paarl. When I was matric, a lot of people dissuaded me to study agriculture. And eventually I decided to go my own way. So I worked in the States as a combine driver for a year. Then came back and enrolled for engineering. And then back then you still had to register in a queue. I don't know, Stefanie, so it doesn't happen like that anymore. But in the queue, I actually decided to switch to agriculture. So on that day, so when I went to my residence, I was in the room of engineer, and I was supposed to be engineer. So I ended up in agriculture. So I did my honors and masters in majoring in economics and agricultural economics. Then I went to farm for 6 months and really enjoyed it, but realized that there's still a few other things that I would want to do and things that I would like to think about. And that's why I actually started my PhD. Did a bit of work with Ferry and the BFAP guys for a year, and then joined Stellenbosch as a lecturer. And did that for 6 years. Then went into the agri-food tech investment space. So worked as an analyst for a company that invests in agri-food tech companies. And now I'm back at Stellenbosch University, and I do a couple of other things. So my responsibility now is in a world where data and data science is becoming increasingly important. How do we position the university and what we do and so forth. So I'll say something more about that. I also have the privilege to work with companies like Matogen Applied Insights, where we do work in agriculture. So yeah, and to the youth, but that will come up. If I had to go back today, I would want to tell myself that obviously agriculture involves farming, but it involves so much more. And there's so many interesting opportunities out there. So yeah, but let's leave that for the rest of the discussion.
Thank you very much for sharing, Jan. Thank you. Carla, tell us a little bit about your journey.
I think mine is a little bit different. I did not have a farming background, did not grow up on a farm. I actually grew up in the city, so It was interesting in our first year. I think about 85% of the class came from city backgrounds, but all being in agriculture. So I studied animal science, which I didn't even know existed until I got at the university, which is one of the things I think which draw me to students and youth, because there is definitely a gap in educating learners on school level about the different options within agriculture. You always only hear about the mainstream, if you can call it, careers within agriculture, but it is so vast and so much more than that. So animal science was a very good option for me. I enjoyed it. I went on to do my honors in both animal science, then in wildlife management. Always wanted to work with animals. And then I got the opportunity to do my master's degree in animal nutrition. So it sort of was just the way the journey went for me to go into agriculture. And at that point, you had two options. What we were told at university is that you either become a nutritionist and you formulate feed, or you go into the field and you sell it. And it was sort of like this internal struggle, because I was just feeling there must be more. I didn't see myself sitting in a factory formulating, but I also didn't want to sell feed. But I did want to work with animals and make a difference in agriculture. I got the opportunity to work for AFMA, which is the Animal Feed Manufacturers Association, which was amazing to get to know the industry, the role players, the way it works, and what is really important. And then I always had a love for communication, and I'm also the vice chair of the SASA's Northern Branch Committee. So being part of the industry on a mentorship level as well was really important. And understanding the issues that we from an animal science perspective experience. And one of that is exactly that, communication. There's a lot of misperceptions in the industry and in the public sector regarding animal science, the production of animal protein. And we are really in a mission to see how can we change that. And that is what makes it amazing for me to be able to work for Brand Republic now, which is primarily focused on exactly that, communication. And what is the importance of understanding from a scientific background, how are we going to communicate effectively? So in, I think, a very different journey to Jan's, but all I'd really want to emphasize to the youth as well is there is so many options within agriculture. And if you have a passion for a specific part, for me, it is writing, communicating, and just being able to tell other people what I know and what I understand on a different level than on a specific research-driven or a technical point. So,
Thank you, Carla. Aviwe, the Eastern Cape is described often as the breadbasket or the future breadbasket of South Africa, but it's often a forgotten province in many senses, both in terms of infrastructure and resources, in terms of events like these. We were talking a little bit before the session started that we need to have a Nampo Eastern Cape. So Grain SA, if you're listening, that's for next year. But Aviwe, please tell us about your background and your journey to where you are.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, so my family has been involved in agriculture for over 100 years, with my grandfather having been a farm laborer, him being born on the farm, being a farm laborer. My dad then went on to also work on a farm, and his first job was working at the University of Fort Hare on the actual farm as a land technician. He then went and worked for the Department of Agriculture in the 80s, and then got his own farm in the late 80s. So I was born on a citrus farm, and in Alice. So Alice in Fort Beaufort also produces quite a lot of citrus. So that's where I was born, got involved in citrus farming. I then went to the University of the Free State, didn't study agriculture, I studied law, and wanted to get into business. Not really get into farming, but get into business. And what then took place was, as I was doing my legal studies, I found that I actually didn't enjoy doing law, and it was going to take me too long to progress up the business ranks. So left law, went back to the family farm, and a couple of years later we got another property, the one that I'm on now. Got married, took a corporate, which is quite different. Took a corporate as a business partner, so I had a company invest in the farm. They took a 50% shareholding. We appointed a management structure, board of directors. So, because my passion's really been on making small businesses big businesses and bringing corporate principles in those kind of businesses. And yeah, so that's what we're doing now. So we're in livestock, sheep farming, chicory, lucerne, and occasionally do a bit of maize as well. So that's my background. So I chair the board. We've got our manager's just left, so we're busy setting up a management structure, putting in a new manager there. But our family is running it at the moment. And got my dad and my brother on board as well as our partners on the board of directors, and that's what we do. Yeah.
So it's incredible to hear that farming, primary production as well, the structure of how it takes place is evolving, it's changing, it's becoming far more business-minded rather than just a family-operated operation. And I think Gershwin, dis waar jou storie ook baie mooi aanpas met Aviwe se storie in die sin dat Gershwin is 'n aandeelhouer. Maar Gershwin, ek gaan aan jou oorgee dat jy vir ons jou agtergrond vertel want jy gaan dit baie mooier verwoord as wat ek kan.
Baie dankie Annelie. Ek is Gershwin Lou. Ek is oorspronklik van Merwewil af. Daar in die Noord-Kaap. Sê maar bietjie Wes-Kaap. Ek het daar groot geword. Ek het op 'n plaas gewoon nie. By my ouers, by my ma groot geraak. En my liefde het begin toe ek skoolvakansies op die plaasbakkie spring en saam met die mense gaan werk. Ek het die mense geken nie, maar ek het opgespring en dit is lekker, ek gaan werk. En daar het my liefde begin. Eers met 'n dorperskap en so het ek maar aangegaan hoërskoolloopbaan op Prins Albert. En daar het ek weer geleer van wortelsaad, eiesaad, daar volstreuse. Toe het die liefde net meer en meer gekweek in my, maar ek wil graag landbou gaan doen. En met my skoolhoof gepraat. Toe sê ek vir hom, dit is wat ek wil doen. En hy het my baie geïnspireer en aangemoedig om dit te gaan doen. Weens dat daar so baie geleenthede is in die landboubedryf. En na dit, my skoolloopbaan het ek 3 jaar diploma gaan doen. By Middelburg Kaap, Grootfontein Landbou College. En na my 3 jaar het ek gaan werk by CMW wat nou tans OVK is, vir 2,5 jaar. Ek was junior wolbemarker daar. En daar het ek weer meer geleer van wol en ek het 'n liefde gekweek vir wol. En 2015, 1 Junie, het ek begin by SVV boerdery wat tans Dasberg boerdery is in Riviersonderend. Ek is hoofbestuurder van 'n lewende hawe by Omskalkviljoen. En my passie het net gegroei. Ek is amper 8 jaar daar en die liefde raak net al hoe meer en meer vir die wolskape en ek geniet dit. En so ek wat 'n persoon wat geen agtergrond het van plaasie. Dis moeilik en daar te kom leer van jy moet bid, jy moet geloof hê, want harde werk kweek die vrugte op die einde van die dag. En vandag is ek gelukkig, ek geniet my werk. Ek word op die tone getrap as ek nie my kan bring nie en dis maar hoe die boerdery gaan.
Sien skalk se daar en
ja. So maar dis vir my lekker en ek geniet dit elke dag. So en dis my agtergrond.
Dankie Gershwin. Helene is probably the youngest on our panel today, so I'm interested to hear what your journey has been.
Yeah, no, I think my story is my CV is not as long as the rest of the panelists. But maybe to start off where my love for agriculture started, we don't come from a farm. Most of our family does farm, but we are city folks, if you can say that. And then on weekends, I went to the farm, I rode horses, and that's where I started getting the love for the farming business and seeing the hart van boere. So from there, I decided that I wanted to go and do animal sciences. I know that I'm an economist today, but it was an interesting journey about how I got there. I started doing my animal sciences degree, also much like Carla, going into doing my honors in animal nutrition, but I soon realized that this is not my passion and this is not an industry that I would be able to work in for the next 40 years. And throughout doing my degree in animal sciences, I was introduced to agricultural economics, where I soon realized that this is a passion of mine and it's something that I understand. And it's a tool for me to apply my background with the economic industry and the city life to bringing it to the farm and being able to help farmers going forward into the farming business. But something that I also want to reiterate is my perception of agriculture was this one tunnel. You either go do animal sciences or go into agronomy or go into economics. But I soon realized that it's so diverse and there's so much things that you can do with it.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much, Hillian. That's a good point for us to kick off the discussion element of today's session. And I want to start off with that diversity because there seems to be a perception or misperception around agriculture that there are certain focus areas, that primary production is pretty much the focus of agriculture. But Jan, I want to start with you here and try and get to the bottom of how do we encourage young people from an earlier age, not just when they've already committed to a certain field of study. How do we convince them earlier that no matter where their passion lies, whether it lies with digital advances, whether it lies with research and development, whether it lies with legal aspects, that agriculture offers not only longevity in terms of career prospects, but how do we convince them that that's something that they want to invest their time and their skills into one day?
So I'm quite happy that we have people from the marketing side of things because, in essence, it's a communication issue. You know, so if I look back when I was matric and considering a career in agriculture, the only option that I figured was, you either become a farmer or work for a cooperative or so forth. And the challenge is still very big. So the other day I spoke to a student. She was at the school in Kaimandi in Stellenbosch, and she was doing agricultural sciences there. She was the top student in the class. And she didn't know about Elsenburg Agricultural College. She didn't know that Stellenbosch has a whole faculty of agri-sciences and so forth. So it's a massive communication challenge, and I'm not sure how to address that.
How in the digital age do we still have a communication problem? Because the platforms are innumerable where people can share information. Carla, I'm going to bounce this to you. How do we fix it? How do we get the information out there?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is probably not accessibility to info, but you need to know what you're looking for. So if you don't know about these colleges, what do you go and search for? So for me, I think there was a lot of debate regarding whose responsibility is it to educate learners about their different sectors. And I think it might be a bit of an omission in terms of, but this association thinks, but it's something they should handle. And in the end, agriculture is such a big community, and we depend on each other from the one sector to the next. And I think what COVID has shown us is that there is so many opportunities in agriculture, and as you said, it's definitely an industry where you have a long career. And all of the discussions that we've had up to now at Nampo was about agriculture has a future because the world needs to eat. Regardless of the type of production system or where we're going, we will have to produce food. So I think the one thing is to give learners that understanding that agriculture is a very lucrative career, and this is what we've seen now through the most of challenging times. So the one thing I think would be for all of these associations to get together and to start reaching out on a school level to students. As you said, it doesn't help that we speak to grade 12s who already had to apply for a degree. We need to start earlier. And I think to also encourage learners to find that one thing or that two things that you're passionate about. Because regardless of what it is, you can work in agriculture. As you said, if you are interested in law, there's always law consulting needed within the different sectors in agriculture. Engineers, they need them. And you can go through that. Communication, creative people, if you're into production, or if you're science-driven, if you feel that economics is your thing, it doesn't matter. There is a space in agriculture. And I think we just need to shed more light on that when it comes to the younger learners.
I want to come to you, Aviwe, because looking at primary production, we unfortunately in South Africa have a situation where generational wealth and access to land makes it easy for some people to access opportunities. There's generational skills transfer and mentorship. And I think it's so encouraging that so many people on the stage don't come from a farming background. You do. So I want to talk about access to capital, to financing for people where generational access to wealth and to land is absent. Do you think we have enough capacitation programs in place, and how do we make that access easier?
Yeah, so I think it's a multi-pronged strategy that you've got to pursue. We also didn't always have access to resources and capital, so it took a very long time for us to get to where we are, and we still haven't made it. But I think what we did as a family is we focused and honed in on this industry and built our expertise around the industry, our networks around the industry, became known, and slowly but surely those opportunities opened up. But I want to contrast that to friends of mine who are not from that background, who are professionals in Johannesburg, in Cape Town, and even overseas. So I've got friends, I think it's 3 groupings of friends who have an investment scheme focused on agriculture. So they all put in 5 to 10,000, these are guys, actuaries, doctors, so they put in 5 to 10,000 rand a month into a kitty, and they buy livestock and put it on farms so that the farmers rent, commercial farmers rent the livestock, and that generates a return for them financially, as well as capital growth. So they're building their assets in the agricultural industry. So I think that's one. On a very basic level, if we're talking about people in the villages and in the informal settlements and the townships, you've got various government programs which are there, but people don't know about them. So it starts from a household food producing program that caters for subsistence farming, and the extension officers who are employed by the Department of Agriculture are supposed to go and let people know about that. Then you've got the food security program for emerging commercial farmers. So these are people who've got access to bigger pieces of land, and they can access that as well. But then you've got the finance aspect of it, where that's not easily available if you don't have assets. And how we solved that is we went and rented a government farm on a 5-year lease. And we could only get access to production loans, meaning that you get the loan, you pay it back at the end of the season, but we couldn't get financing for infrastructure. So we lobbied the government as a farmers organization. We lobbied the government and managed to get a 30-year lease, not just for ourselves, but many other emerging farmers. And because the financial institutions had told us, if you can get a 30-year lease, we'll be comfortable with that, and we can lend long-term capital. So that's what we did. And then we also decided to partner with people who have expertise in the farming business. Hence the farming corporate that I've partnered with, which has over 1,200 branches throughout the Eastern Cape, I think 2 in the Southern Cape now. And they've got commercial extension farm officers, they've got accountants, they've got lawyers, they've got all the expertise that you need to make your business a success. So partnerships are key, access to information is key, and being learned, even if you are a doctor, having the ability to read, extract information and know how to use it is very important, irrespective of the degree that you study. And I think when you marry all those 3 components together, then you start to build momentum in the industry.
Gershwin, I'm going to come to you next, but I want to ask, what do you think is the future? Because it would be an elephant in the room if we didn't address it. Once we address it, it's no longer an elephant. What do you think is going to happen to land reform and to land expropriation without compensation going forward? And what's the future? What do young people feel about it? You've got a group of friends who invest in livestock. They're putting their money and their earnings from other sectors into agriculture for a reason. But we've got to look at the sustainability of the models we use.
Sure. Look, I think as an industry, first and foremost, we have to believe in the industry and believe that it's going to be, it's an industry that can build the country. That's the first thing. If we do that, we will start to attract the necessary skills. It's not about owning a farm. It's not about having access to land. It's about what role you can play in the industry. So if you go to mining, not everyone who's involved in the mining field or in the banking and high finance field owns a bank, owns a mine. But what those industries have done is they've said, we're glamorous enough, profitable enough to build your career. And that has attracted the skills and the talent that has made that industry keep on growing. So if in agriculture, instead of just focusing on primary agriculture, we can say we are an industry that can build your family, that can build long-term generational wealth without getting access to land, then half of the problems that we're talking about will disappear. But we don't have the industry articulating its voice in that way. So that's a problem. Everyone is focused on land, but not everyone is focused on the opportunity and wealth building apart from the land in agriculture. And we need to get that message right. And the only way we'll get that right is if people like myself, like Gershwin and other people, become a success. And that's what will attract people ultimately. If you are a success and people see that you are successful, that's what attracts people to the industry. But if people see me struggling as a farmer, then no young person wants to be a part of that.
Absolutely.
Because it's a road to nowhere.
Yeah.
So we have to communicate success as the industry and continue highlighting the success stories.
And I'm glad you talk about success stories because I want to highlight, Gershwin, your participation or your involvement in the Pulse program. En Gershwin, as jy vir ons bietjie meer kan vertel, want ek dink baie van die mense wat hier sit weet dalk nie wat Pulse is en wat Pulse doen nie en hoe dit bygedra het tot jou vermoë om geleenthede bewus te wees van die geleenthede, dit aan te gryp en om te wees waar jy nou is 'n aandeelhouer van 'n plaas, waar jy nie net die lewende hawe die hoofbestuurder is nie, maar waar jy ook 'n aandeel het in die toekoms van die plaas.
Ja, Pels is 'n maatskappy of 'n besigheid wat baie boere help en ons as swart boere saam met die kommersiële boer bymekaar te bring en sodoende elke projek te laat groei en almal deel te maak daarvan. Pels was ons skakeling tussen kommersieel en ons as swart boere om bymekaar te kom om die doel waarna toe hulle werk om ons as kommersiële boere by einde van die dag te bring sodat ons die regte kanale volg en dat niemand benadeel raak of vorentoe of klip kan gooi of ietsie. En Pels is baie innoverend as dit kom by partnerships. En hulle doen goeie werk en ons as aandeelhouers by Das werk. Ons is hoe kan ek sê, happy span en ons werk lekker saam en alles word gedoen volgens boek wat moet gedoen word en niemand kan moeilikheid maak nie. En Pels is die skakeling of was die skakeling vir ons om ons vorentoe te neem en sodoende ons besigheid te laat groei en kan 'n voorbeeld wees om ander besighede dieselfde pad te volg en sodoende hulle swart boere kommersieel op die einde van die dag te bring of te maak en sodat hulle op hulle eie kan funksioneer. En ja, en Pels het nou al so ver voordat hulle oral in die land is en dis 'n baie unieke maatskappy en veral vir ons en ons groei daagliks en ons besigheid doen goed en ja.
Ek dink dit is belangrik om uit te lig dat daar 'n paar elemente is van die Pels model. Dit is gebaseer en hoekom ek so 'n bietjie van hulle weet, ons het met African Farming 2 episodes gedoen oor pelsboere. En ons werk nogal nauweliks met hulle in verbintenis. In terme van en ek gaan oorskakel Engels toe as julle my sal vergewe. When we're talking about transformation, there have to be certain boxes to be ticked. Training, mentorship, partnerships, the legal structure has to be in place and there has to be a replicatable business model. that works. And there have to be structures in place. And I think that's what you're describing, Gershwin. And if we can use the same kind of principles in other communities with other farmers, then that's definitely looking towards more scalable success in the future. But I want to use that and take it a little bit forward to a slight tangent here, because there's a lot of information we want to get through. And I want to talk to you, Hillian, specifically about technology. Because we have to create a way, young people just have a natural advantage where they are natural early adopters of technology. Excuse me, my mic keeps falling off. So they have this natural affinity for technology. They understand the digital revolution, but they have a drawback in the sense that because they have a lack of experience early on in their careers, they aren't able to use that technological advance so that we can integrate the use of technology into existing commercial operations where perhaps technology is not quite as advanced as it should be. So looking at that model of training, scalability, format, legal frameworks, how do we use the same kind of an approach to make sure that young people in agriculture can really, live up to their potential?
Yeah. I'm maybe going to answer this with my Grain SA hat on. But we as youth have so much bigger responsibility than just filling the shoes of the generation before us. We are sitting with a world population that is ever increasing, and the population needs to eat. And through generating new hectares to be able to produce the food that feeds the nation, technology is the main tool that we as youth can use to do that. I think this discussion interlinks with a few little discussions that we've been having, but using technology and going into the different diverse fields of agriculture, we can use that to increase production and meet the needs of the nation and the world and population that is ever increasing. Maybe if I can give a bit of example, we as youth, we have precision agriculture is now coming into the picture, which a lot of further generations maybe did not have. So we can enter the market, use that technology, and with that increase production. Farming is it's not only sitting in the tractor and being in the field, it's understanding the business, knowing what's going on internationally, using the technology that you have to your advantage. There's so many examples that I can list in each sector that is technology advancing production and how the youth is involved in that.
Jan, I want you to link into that for me in terms of where we're going. So technology is going to play continually a big role in how we reimagine what agriculture is, how we can produce more food on the same amount of land that we have, while still also farming alongside nature a little bit more carefully. I think perhaps in the past we've taken resources for granted. As climate change, the impact of climate change is felt more and more, the way we approach agriculture has got to change. And I think perhaps for the youth, therein lies a golden opportunity to work alongside existing farmers to make that change quicker, because it's not happening quick enough. So in terms of policy formation and your work there, how do we get the youth involved in a level of policy formation where their vision for a healthier future of the world can play a stronger role?
Yeah, so you mentioned technology, and I've had the privilege to write a column on agricultural technology for Nampo Cape now for about 10 years or so. And for the last couple of months, I've really been thinking about what is technology. And the best definition that I could actually come up with is, my uncle always says that you don't buy a good farm, you make a good farm. And if you think about it, technology is all of the things that enables you to make your farm good. And when we think about technology, we tend to think about things that we can see or touch, so the tractors or the drones or robots or all kinds of things. And obviously that makes us excited and so forth. But I think over the next 10 to 15 years, the thing that's going to drive technology are not necessarily things that we can see or touch. And those two things, I think, is the first is data. So think about anything that somebody would say, this is technology, and I can guarantee you that that thing would generate data, would collect data. So the challenge is how do we take that data, integrate that data, and make decisions with that. Now, if you look at farmers in the US, they did a survey last year again asking them, various decisions that you actually make on your farm. And all of those farmers are saying that, we are using multiple data sources to make decisions. So I think the farmers of the futures are the ones who are going to see data as an asset, are going to invest into collecting and managing that data, and then also companies that can actually unlock value from it. The second technology that we can't see, and this is tying into the environment specifically, I think especially if you're going to be in the export-orientated business, the world of using petrochemicals for crop protection is coming to an end. That is just a fact.
Just careful, Jan, there's a
Yeah.
lot of chemical companies exhibiting here at
well,
Nampo.
yeah.
It's a touchy subject.
So no, but there are, if you look at the market for biological products, that's growing at 15% per year. If you look at consumers in Europe and so forth, they are clearly against chemicals. I'm not saying that there's not going to be a role to be played with those, but it's not going to be in the way that it is now. But there's amazing opportunities opening up, friends of mine have a farm outside Stellenbosch, and one of the diseases there, you can manage very effectively using predatory insects. So literally wasps that attacks aphids. And the wonderful thing about this is that it's actually more effective because it's not an indiscriminate product, and every year it actually works better and so forth. So for the youth, there's amazing opportunities in plant pathology, in terms of breeding insects and releasing them. So all of us are going to be farming, using insects in our farming operations. So where is the insect farmers going to come from, and who's going to train them for them to be released? But let's stop it there now.
I want to come back to you, Gershwin, because in order to retain the youth in the sector, there's got to be a perception, not only that it's lucrative, that there is space for everyone, that there is a future to be made from it, but there's got to be a perception in terms of primary production that it's safe. We can't talk about the future of agriculture if we don't talk about farm safety and rural rejuvenation. So as a young farmer with a young family, with a daughter who's 9-year-old, who's sitting in the audience, not sure if she's watching you just yet, maar sy gaan eendag baie grootlik na jou opkyk. Hoe voel jy oor plaasveiligheid en wat is julle ervaring waar jy tans is?
Annelie, in die Weskaap is ons, of daar waar ons is dit meer rustiger en my vrou sluit al die deure deur die dag. Sy is maar 'n bietjie skrikkerig want dit is haar eerste keer op die plaas, maar vir ons is dit, ons is veilig bekant buitekant om en jou gestel moet net reg wees. Ek sê vir as iets gebeur, gebeur dit, maar jy voel, as jy gelukkig is en jy voel beveilig, dan ons, jy so 'n bietjie vir, maar die veiligheid vir ons op ons plase, het ons sover, ons het dit bekamp, ons het vir ons 'n heining om gesit en die mense voel almal veilig op die plase waar ons nou beweeg en so. Maar ek sê altyd, jou mindset moet reg wees. jy moet goeie ondersteuning hê en as dinge regloop, maar dinge kan skeef ook loop, maar veiligheid in die Weskaap is nie soos in die Vrystaat nie. Ons is aan die rustige kant kan jy maar basies sê, maar jy ja, dit is 'n moeilike saak om oor te praat en
Natuurlijk.
en vir my is dit ons boere moet voedsel produseer vir die land, maar jy loop maar met dit in jou hart. Ja, en vir my is dit nie lekker om daaroor te praat nie en want dit kan met enigiemand gebeur en ja, en maar jy moet as persoon of as boerdery of as boer doen van jou kant af dit wat jy kan om jou familie te beveilig en seker te maak dat hulle veilig is en jou werkers en almal. En weet dat God daar is vir jou. En dat hy jou beskermer is en dat jy altyd op sy knoppie kan druk. En soos ek vir sê, dis 'n baie moeilike saak om oor te praat. En ja, joe.
Maar dit raak elke produsent in die land, Gershon. En ek bly het ook gepraat van plaaswerkers en daar moet ons ook die breër landelike gemeenskappe intrek, want 'n baie nou samewerking tussen produsente, landboubesighede en plaaslike landelike gemeenskappe speel 'n verskriklik groot rol in landelike veiligheid en daarmee gepaard in conjunction with rural safety very much also goes rural rejuvenation. If we can keep young people in farming communities, in small far-flung towns where agriculture is the main economic driver, and if we can encourage them, there is a life to be made, not only as a farmer, but living and working in those small towns, supporting farmers in what they do, then rural safety is promoted alongside that. And Aviwe, I want to come to you on this issue because yesterday in a conversation about rural rejuvenation, the point was made that farmers are sometimes at fault. They send their children to better, sometimes private schools, sometimes far away, not necessarily the school in the town where they are a part of the daily community. And in doing that, it almost, from a young age, alienates the child from that small town, rural, farms lifestyle community. And that plays a role in trying to, how do we keep young people specifically from leaving those towns and going to the city to make a livelihood, because it's across the board and it's across cultural groupings, racial groupings, language groupings. A lot of young people either feel they have to go to the city to make a good living, and some people even take it as far as feeling that they have to leave the country, which is such a sad reality, and it's resulting in a brain drain.
Yeah, so I think again, as the industry, we have to take responsibility for it. So I'm going to weave a couple of things into it. So we spoke about technology, involvement of young people with technology. So my son, who's turning 6 this year, so he was 5 last year, he took his first coding lesson and the instructor was overseas. Okay. I know a farmer, successful farmer, who managed to rally a couple of other successful farmers, and he's on his second private school in the Kirkwood Addo area, in the citrus belt. He's building a second private school so that they can keep their managers from sending their children to schools 120, 200 k's away. So they're building that community. The very same farmer raised money from investors and they're building a shopping center in that town. So they're plowing their money into that community and bettering that community. But it makes commercial sense for them to do so. So it's not something that cannot be done. But the problem is where we're not able to articulate as the agricultural industry who we are and what our image is. Then we run into a problem where people view us as being an irrelevant industry. So we need to get into areas where we can lobby the government, we can lobby society, the media can play that pivotal role. that can make people want to become a part of this industry. It can be an industry that can speak to the government and get investment zones built up in those small farming communities. Because what you've got, say, where I come from, we are a whole bunch of sheep farmers. But our sheep get taken to the feedlots up north. And from there, they get sent to the abattoirs further up north. But the main consumers of that food are along the coast. So that meat comes back and is sold along the coast. So why can't we, as the sheep industry, lobby for investment opportunities in the areas where we come from and create hubs, commercial hubs, along the value chains in those areas? So it needs business people to see the value in it. It needs business people to be able to lobby the government. It needs business people to promote the industry as an industry where you can obtain success in. And that's what will draw the talent, the media coverage, etc., to make those small towns better.
We're talking about increasing communication, increasing reach, increasing visibility, making the sector attractive, getting the information to the right people. And something that I'm very passionate about personally is making sure, and it may be a subject that a lot of people sort of try to avoid, but is gender parity. And it's no mistake or no accident that there are 3 women on the stage today, because I think it's very important for there to be visible role models, people in the sector for young girls and women to look up to. And I think in a lot of the meetings probably that we go to, or the platforms that we circulate in, there are a certain type of figure in agriculture. White males above 50. How do we, Carla? And I saw you trying to dodge the question, but I'm asking you specifically because livestock, animal feeds, animal science is probably also perceived to be male dominated. And I want to ask you whether it was difficult for you at varsity level, moving into your early professional career, whether you had to work harder, longer, be more fierce to try and get to the same opportunities as your male counterparts? And how do we encourage women to enter the sector, not just with confidence, but knowing that they're going to have the same doors to knock on?
Anli, I'm actually laughing because when I was studying animal science, and then in our final year, we had this compulsory practical that you need to visit at least 4 different production farms. And then I had to go to one of my lecturers to just get the information regarding what was required from us. And I will never forget the day he looked at me and he said, "You know what? A pretty little young thing like you will never get to have a say on a farm. A farmer will never listen to you." And at that moment, I remember feeling, but aren't we defeating the purpose now? Isn't the whole aim of educating young women that you do have a ground to stand on? And, you know, I felt like challenge accepted. Because, let's see, you're probably right. But we will keep on going through this process until I have a say. Because not through being in your face, but just through being knowledgeable, and even if it means visiting the same farmer repetitively until they have that breakthrough, that it isn't a male-dominant thing. There is definitely the perception on a farm level that farmers do have this inclination to rather listen to the male reps that visit their farms. But times are changing, and some of the better reps in the field, you know, technically inclined and really knowledgeable, are now coming through. And in my experience in the industry, it is definitely one that's changing. There's at least a 50-50 split now with more women coming into agriculture. So I think we do work harder, and it's not because of a lack on our side. It's a perception that we need to change, and it will be changing. I think there's a lot of role models in agriculture, women role models that have proven that. And this is not standing up being a feminist. It's just saying that there's a lot of perceptions we need to break in agriculture. One is, we said earlier, it is a lucrative career, and people tend to think of agriculture as farming. That needs to change. And then the second thing is that men and women are equal in this field to be able to contribute in the future.
Just for some perspective, and I don't unfortunately have stats with me to be able to share with you, but if we look at informal agriculture, subsistence farming, who are the people producing food for families? In many cases, they are women. They are single mothers, they are women growing what they can on the piece of land that they have and turning that into a business. And if we give them the opportunities to scale that and we give them access to markets, geez, we could see a revolution here. I'm not saying let's all be feminists, but let's challenge where we can to the girls in the audience. Challenge at every opportunity, never step back. On that point, I want to talk about business opportunities, public-private partnerships, what the future looks like, because agriculture is challenging in so many different ways. There are a lot of challenges. It's never going to be an easy career. But I think what we can take from every conversation we've had so far at Nampo Cape, at Nation in Conversation, is that there's incredible energy, positivity, hope, and there's a proactive approach from all the people in agriculture, not just primary producers, not just agribusinesses, people in research and development, in the science field of agriculture. So what are we looking at in terms of public-private partnerships going forward to capacitate the sector as a whole? Jan.
Yeah, maybe I should leave it to my colleagues who are closer to the coalface. What I can say is that people tend to think that the definition of a farmer is somebody who grows or harvests something. And I don't agree with that. You know, in my mind, the definition of a farmer is a professional risk manager, somebody who exposes himself to all kinds of risks every day. You know, and managing those risks can't be done without partnerships. And I think, well, the obvious one is insurance. If you look at agricultural policy in the US today, you know, they don't get subsidies in the sense that, in the same way as the Europeans do, but for every dollar that they put into insurance, they get $3 from the government. So imagine farming in the world without risk. And I think those partnerships should actually be geared towards helping us manage risk. But let's leave it to my colleagues who are closer to the coalface.
Anyone who feels they want to contribute?
I maybe just want to add another example to how the agricultural industry uses private and public partnerships. I think we all aren't oblivious to the Transnet problem and the railway problem that we have in the industry. And that's also an opportunity in agriculture for private and public sectors to get into each other or to get together and further the industry, further the grain production, the citrus, everything will, even fertilizer production will be what's the word that I'm looking for? That's a goed wees vir die kunsmisindustrie. So that's an example of, just another example in the agriculture, how we can use private and public sectors together to further production in South Africa.
I think we've got 15 minutes left. I want to use the opportunity to get some questions from the audience, especially from the young people. Please don't feel this session is aimed mostly at you, so your questions come first. While you're thinking of them, we are very privileged, and I was remiss not to acknowledge you, Minister for Agriculture in the Western Cape, Dr. Ivan Meyer. Thank you very much for attending this session. And I want to give an opportunity to you, firstly, to add your contribution to what's been said here today before we give an opportunity for questions from the rest of the audience.
Firstly, let me say good morning to everybody. I'm really excited. It's much better to sit here than in Parliament. Because here you can learn, you can reflect, you can think, and these are people with the future of the next 30, 40, 50 years. Unlike people who are looking forward to their retirement, who happens to be in Parliament. I'm here because I'm inspired by what I've heard here this morning. And if I may reflect, but I want to firstly reflect to the lady who said about her lecturer who say they're not going to listen to you. Behind me is Dr. Ilse Trautmann, who also has a PhD in plant sciences. She's my Deputy Director General for many other functions in the government and my Chief Advisor. And she yesterday, when we spoke to women, she used a quote, and I think it's very apt in the context of what you said. And this is the quote that Dr. Trautmann shared with us yesterday. She said, strong women don't have attitudes. Strong women have high standards. I hope your lecturer, wherever he is hearing this message. Because it is a great injustice to train people in the sector and then deny them an opportunity to make an impact. Wherever that lecturer is, I'm willing and able to apologize to you. Because we must take, his words was, we must take responsibility for these things. But I'm also happy what I heard here today. I heard resilience and hope. Francois from West, he said that resilience and hope are the fires for the future. That's what I've heard here today in this discussion. I heard somebody said, I'm not a farmer, but I still want to be a farmer. Aspirational. The hope is still there. The fire is still burning. I heard somebody say it's data and it's evidence. In the Western Cape, we manage agriculture on the basis of data and evidence. Very important in agriculture. I heard about citrus farming. I'm excited about that because South Africa is the second biggest exporter of citrus fruit in the world after Spain. I'm very happy when I heard let's apply corporate principles into small-scale farming. I'm very excited to also inform you that we have in the Western Cape a youth portal, a Western Cape youth portal. 10 years ago I went to Bavaria in Germany and I saw Jugendportal. And I said, but this is a great thing. Youth is not going to knock on a government door and find opportunities. That they're on the social media, on the platform. So I said when I came back, we want a youth portal. And you can go on that youth portal and there are multiple portals. And those who are interested in even abroad, there's a European portal. But portal is the access to information. People are not going to read in the newspapers. Also, I'm very happy to hear that land is no more means of production. It's skills and knowledge. You don't need to own land to be in agriculture. You don't need to own a mine to be in mining. I'm very happy when I heard stories of generational wealth creation. That makes me excited. I'm happy when I hear success attracts success. That's what it's all about. I want to conclude by saying that I am looking also now globally what are the 5 main trends in agriculture. One is industrialization, changes in consumption patterns, social demands, technology, and then obviously climate change in the environment and sustainable development goals. And to the youth here, I'm happy you study agriculture, want landbou is 'n wetenskap. 'n Wetenskap het navorsing nodig. Maar die woord landbou is ook 'n werkwoord. Landbou, bou die land. So it's just bigger than just agriculture. It's building this country. This country is broken. It needs to be fixed. Everything in South Africa almost is not working. But there's hope because landbou is die een instrument wat die samelewing kan bou. And I'm so happy that you're studying agriculture, because one of my strategic goals as a minister is to have more agricultural schools in the Western Cape, but also to have more agricultural subjects in existing schools. To date, we have more than 31 agriculture-focused schools here in the Western Cape. We will put more money in agricultural schools. So I'm happy for your teachers and your educators from these two schools and those students at the back who study agriculture. There's a great future. That is what we want to see, you investing in that specific place. The agricultural economists can tell us in 2020, at the peak of COVID, all the sectors had negative economic growth in South Africa. It was only the agricultural sector that had positive economic growth in 2020. In the first quarter of 2020, 28% GDP growth. Second quarter, 15%. Over 12 months, 13.2%. If you look at last year, agriculture, 8.3%. That's the message of hope. So you're in the right journey, you're in the right profession, and we are looking forward to you to fix South Africa, because it's pretty much broken. And I have faith in agriculture. That's why I created a hashtag for the love of agriculture. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ivan Mayo. I want to give you all an opportunity. If you have any questions from the audience, please raise your hand. We'll bring you a microphone. You can ask a question. There we go. Skulk.
Ja, ek wil by Dr. Meyer aansluit. Ek het nie noodwendig 'n vraag nie, net 'n opmerking, en ek wil by hom aansluit en vir die jong mense wat hier so sit sê, wel dan dat julle landbou op skool neem, en wel dan dat julle in landbou belangstel, want die toekoms van ons land lê in landbou. En dan wil ek so 'n klein bietjie by Gasman aansluit. Ek is nou sy kommersiële vernoot, maar in terme van die hele pelsding waarna jy verwys het, het ons die oorlede Dr. Mohammed Karaan het altyd gesê ons moet die koek groter maak. En ons kon dit regkry in die proses om die koek groter te maak en werk te skep, want as dit die Weskaapse regering het vir ons waterregte gegee, dampermit gegee, en ons kon 'n boerdery uitbou en 'n heeltemal nuwe sektor, 'n sitrussektor daar vestig wat 200 werksgeleenthede geskep het vir die platteland. En waar jong mense, ons vat hulle uit matriek uit, ons bring hulle in die boerdery in, ons leer hulle en ons wil hulle nog eendag weer ons vennote maak. So moenie ophou om te droom oor landbou nie.
Baie dankie, Skulk. Stefan.
Thank you. I just want to make a remark about the opportunities within agriculture. I personally operate within the sector, but as Dr. Ivan spoke there, you can go and check on their website, Elsenburg. There's a lot of practical information. You can go on to any website of these organizations which publish magazines. I mean, many of these magazines are freely to download, and there's a lot of opportunities you can read. Some of them mission the statement, and their mission statements, you can see the kind of opportunities that they will create. Agricultural organizations like Agri-SA, they've got affiliates in each province, and those people are needing skills like lawyers to be appointed there, so you can go around where you will see, but there are great opportunities, and go and speak to the universities, because there are opportunities, and not only when it comes to science. I mean, like human resources, there are specific labor legislation that focuses specifically on agriculture, and you need skilled people to speak to the employees to say this is how the law works and this is how it must be interpreted. So there are great opportunities here.
Baie dankie. Enige vrae van die jong mense in die gehoor? Daarso, dankie.
I have a question. So you talked about technology and precision farming, and like the minister also said, climate change. Do you think that moving back to more sustainable farming practices is the way to ensure food security, not only for South Africa, but for the whole world, moving back to being more sustainable?
Helene, wil jy vir ons
Maybe if I
antwoord?
can take that question. There is a drive, and I can compliment the Western Cape province with this drive to more sustainable production practices. A bit further north, it's a bit frowned upon at this moment, and the big reason behind that is to go into sustainable farming, you have to change your farming practices. And changing your mindset to get there is not always that easy. But together with that, it's also, you have to go through a bit of a dip in terms of profitability. And if we look at how high input costs are at the moment, it's not necessarily an avenue that is suitable or it's not an option possible. It's not possible for a lot of farmers now to change their farming practices, acquire new technology. Yeah, so I hope that answers your question a bit. Yeah.
Nog vrae uit die gehoor uit. Het enige iemand 'n vraag? Okay, no questions at the moment, but there's still going to be more opportunities. At any time now, you have a question, you stick up your hand. I want to go down our line of panelists again, and from each of you, just get 2 or 3 short sentences on what makes you hopeful and positive for the future of agriculture, not just for yourself in whatever sector that you are in, but as a means of inspiring our audience here and our broader audience on the World Wide Webs.
Yeah, so I want to come back to what I said earlier, that you don't buy a good farm, you make a good farm. And, you know, the amount of technology that we have access to today is just far greater than ever before. And it's just increasing, you know, so somebody will have to develop that technology, somebody will have to use it, somebody will have to finance it, somebody would have to support it and so forth. So
somebody will have to sell it.
Somebody will have to sell it, you know, so you can look at the entire value chain. So as a farmer, the opportunities for you to do more with less is just increasing. And even if you don't want to be a farmer, but you want to be involved in the sector, the opportunities are there and they're ever growing. So I'm very excited about that. So yeah.
Carla, over to you.
Maybe a bit more philosophical.
Philosophical.
There we go. Philosophical. My message would just be that agriculture is an amazing community. And if you have a passion, there is a way for you to live it out in agriculture. And if you can just keep the hope and just persist in where you want to go, anything really is possible.
Thank you very much, Carla.
Yeah, I think all successful countries have built their initial foundations on agriculture. And if we want to be a success in the eyes of the world, we've got to get that right. I think the second thing tied to that for people who want to be change makers, if you impact a person's stomach, you can impact the way that they think. So we need to get our voice out there as the agricultural sector and make sure that we're shaping the way people think, because we are impacting their stomachs.
Gershwin, wat is vir jou belangrik? Wat gee vir jou hoop?
Ja, vir my, wat hoop gee vir my in die landbou is daar om te bly. En om voedselsekuriteit te verseker, ons as jong mense, moet ons drome uitleef en elke geleentheid wat kom na jou toe, aan te gryp, want daar is soveel geleenthede in die landbou en daar is fondse beskikbaar om ons te help, om iets te bekom in die lewe en om landbou vorentoe te vat en voedselsekuriteit te verseker.
Maybe I'm going to answer this out of a bit of a younger generation's view, but I'm extremely excited to be part of agriculture. It's an industry that's ever growing and it's so dynamic, and there's so many opportunities in agriculture that you didn't even think of when you were at school. So I'm very excited to be part of it, and I'm excited to see what's going to be happening 10 years from now, what we are going to be able to do with technology in the future and how agriculture is going to look. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think we'll give an opportunity to Dr. Ivan Meyer again, just to give us a closing address. Would you like to join us in the front here, Doctor, just so that we can get... Ja, natuurlijk.
Can I ask the learners to join me on the stage? It's about you.
There's also some agricultural students in the audience, so maybe they also, yeah.
They are most welcome.
Yeah.
Please join us. There's a program on television, Mark Me Famous. You are going to be famous right now. Firstly, let me say, we must think, and I'm so happy that our academic spoke about, he did think about his future. I want you to also think about your future. But to think about your future, you need to have data, evidence, and science. What is the data in the Western Cape telling us? Firstly, the data tell us that the Western Cape is 129,000 square kilometer in size, 7 million people. South Africa is 1.3 million square kilometer in size. If you do your maths, South Africa, or rather the Western Cape, is 10% the size of South Africa, and it's about 10% of the population of South Africa. And yet, our farmers in this province is responsible for 55% of South Africa's agricultural exports. Think about that and think deep. 10% of the population, 10% of the geographical size, and our farmers, primary agriculture, is responsible for 55% of South Africa's agricultural exports. That should tell you a story. Western Cape is the biggest commercial agriculture in South Africa, 20%. Stats SA confirmed that in the year 2018, commercial agriculture contributed 64.4% of revenue in agriculture in this Western Cape. There was a study done, the role of commercial agriculture in the Western Cape, and they've done a similar study in all other provinces. But as a government, which I represent, you can't have that growth if you don't build infrastructure. If you have been to Bothaville, Nampo, and you've seen those roads, I'm thankful to the farmers in the Free State who built those roads, who fixed those roads so that we could have access. We understand that in the Western Cape, we are responsible for the biggest soft fruit industry south of the equator. Now, if you're responsible for the biggest soft fruit industry south of the equator, you must understand you need to have proper road infrastructure. And that's what we've invested. We've got about 70,000 farmers here in the Western Cape. 4% primary agriculture, 7% secondary agriculture, 11% the contribution of both primary and secondary agriculture here in the Western Cape. So for us, in economics, anything more than 10% is significant. And we believe agriculture is playing a significant role. But you cannot have such a big data and evidence, and you only have 3 agricultural schools in the province. So I made it my mission. I want to see more agricultural schools, more agricultural subjects, and that's why we've also published this booklet, 50 career opportunities in agriculture. And because you look so nice, I give it to you. And the rest can download it on the website of the Western Cape Government website. But there are more opportunities for agriculture, and we want to invite you. There's a graduate program for agriculture. We've got a program for skills development, internships, learnerships. We have a program to also send graduates to the United States, in America, Colorado. We've got such a program. And we are happy to roll out any of that support in the Western Cape because we have faith in the youth and we have faith in agriculture. And there was a question about climate change and the transition of agriculture. I think over time we will see the following transitions. Currently, dominating agriculture is chemical. That transition will over time move to biological, as explained. Ultimate goal, eventually in the future, more and more farmers will also farm organic. Why? Because that's the demand. You must be demand-led, citizen-led. When I went to Germany, was at the biggest fruit festival in Berlin, Fruit Logistica, and I met people there. Every year, my family, in fact, I'm the guy to go to fruit lovers or food lovers. Then I buy net so groot mama se waterlemoen. En dan sit ek die waterlemoen in my garage. And everybody walking around that watermelon, nobody is cutting or touching that watermelon, because once you cut it, there's a problem in the fridge. And I end up every year I do the same for the last 30 years, and I give it eventually to my domestic. So every year she knows that's part of a Christmas box when she see that watermelon. But when you go to Europe, they say no, plant for specifications. People are getting older, the fridges are smaller, the package size in the fridge, so you must package something that fit into the fridge of senior citizens. When you go there to Brazil, the watermelon look like a sweet melon. That one I want to buy, because when I cut it, it will fit into my fridge. So we are seeing globally change in consumer behavior, and that was expedited by COVID. Skielik eet almal lemoene. Skielik drink ek suurlemoen in my tee. I need to lose weight to look great. And suddenly everybody is changing their behavior. But I want to thank Senves and the panel of experts here today. I certainly learned quite a lot of things and new things when young people are taking up agriculture, and I'm absolutely spot on. Every nation in the world at the foundation was built on agriculture. And I think what I want to see is small-scale farmers, black farmers, become commercial farmers. So we now have a program, 50 black farmers to become commercial farmers, but with skills, with capacity, and with mentorship, as was pointed out by our commercial farmers, and the necessary support. But absolutely right, when I became a minister of agriculture, I saw, but there's something wrong here. Everybody hates in parliament. They talk down to agriculture. If there's a problem, agriculture. Land, farmers. Violence, farmers. So I thought, but it can't be. Julle wil lekker eet, maar julle wil die boere sleg sê. So I decided it's going to change. And I did it with a simple thing. I launched a hashtag for the love of agriculture. And it's a global hashtag. It's now also on a truck, refrigerated truck from a French company. So when you see a refrigerated truck, petite, that hashtag is launched on that truck. I want that hashtag to be all over Europe, because I want people to love farmers, love producers. I think we are changing it. Messaging, communication, as we've heard here today. And I have now, the hashtag is on my fridge at home. So when I see my fridge, I see the love for agriculture. My staff is sitting here. They're taking photos of you. If you want to see your photo, follow the hashtag for the love of agriculture. That's where you're going to see it. You want to become famous? You're already famous. Because people who are in agriculture are famous. Not for themselves, but as he said, if you can affect what people put in their tummy, you've already affected how they think, and that's what I love about that point. So thank you for those who are studying agriculture, landbouwetenskap, landboutegnologie, en landboubestuur. Bestuurspraktyke soos hulle doen. Every town where I visit a school, and I tell the principal, are you having agricultural subjects? No, I move on. I want more schools. So the teachers who are here, the educators in the audience, thank you for bringing the learners. Nampo is not an exhibition, it's not a show. It is demonstrating the agricultural economy, innovation and technology. Nampo is a source of inspiration so that they can see that this is an economy. If you know what is generated here, in terms of this town, what this means for the economy of this, all the hotels are full. Tonight, I slept last night at Arniston. They kicked me out this morning. The place is full. Tonight I must sleep in Caledon. 1 hour's drive, but I will do it for the love of agriculture. Thank you.
Just a closing, thank you very much, Dr. Ivan Meyer, as always. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you to our panel. I think if anything came out of today's session, if I can sum it up, listen to what you want to do, find your passion, listen to the information out there, gather the information, make a decision, and let your voice always be heard and change the face of agriculture in South Africa. Thank you.